Hello everyone. Good evening. Welcome to today's session. I hope you can hear me very clearly. If my audio is fine, please tell me that. Okay. This is a part of our NCERT series that we have been having for the past 2 weeks. We have already completed 2 textbooks. Okay. The Standard 6 NCERT History and Standard 7 NCERT History. And today we are moving on to our third year textbook, that is Standard 8. Okay. So this week from Monday today onwards till Friday, we will be covering this particular textbook, a couple of chapters every day. And by Friday, this textbook will also be over. And we will move on to Standard 9, 10, 11 and finally 12. Okay. So the aim is to complete all the NCERT textbooks in this particular series. Okay. So today is lecture 10. But it is the first lecture from the Standard 8 textbook. Okay. So again, welcome to the class and thank you for joining. Okay. So before we begin, let me just tell you something about Unacademy. Unacademy is India's largest learning platform and it offers you a wide variety of benefits. Okay. You have daily live classes like the one we are having right now, where you can chat with your educator. You can, ask him doubts, clear your queries, etc. etc. Then you have live tests and quizzes, which will help you to gain more confidence by the time you reach the examination hall. Okay, so practice more and more. Free tests are available in our app also. Please do take a look at that as well. Then you have this structured course. Okay, structured course means there will be a specific timetable, and based on that, the entire syllabus for the UPSC exam will be covered. Okay, the entire syllabus from starting to beginning, everything will be covered. And a course has started today. On October 19th, a course has actually started for the mission 2021. Okay, those who are writing for the next year, you can actually join this batch. Only started on October 19th, that is today. And you can still join it if you would like. Okay. Then Unacademy also gives you unlimited access to all the resources that are relevant for your examination. Now, how to get all these things? Simply download Unacademy Learning app from Google Play or App Store and create an account. Okay. So before that, let me introduce to you myself. I am Madhav Sankar R Warrier and you can follow me in my Telegram channel t.me/msrw1. Okay. Also, please follow me on unacademy.com/@msrw. Here also I am taking classes. Right now a world history series is going on. Today is the third class. So please follow me there as well so that you may not miss any of my classes. Okay, now moving on. So Unacademy brings you all these top educators from all over the country. You can interact with them, ask them your queries, doubts, etc. etc. Okay, so if you go for a subscription in the UPSC CSE channel, what all will you be getting? Okay, hello Raju, welcome. Okay, so you will be getting all these things: polity, history, current affairs, Indian economy. So everything for the UPSC Civil Service examination is provided to you as a package. Okay, including your optional courses. There is no special fees for anything like that. You can actually avail the optional course as well. Also, practice and strategy sessions are there for your prelims, answer writing courses for your mains. So all these are given to you as a package if you go for a subscription. Okay, and the current subscription rates are as follows: 1 month 8,000 all the way to 1 year 44,000 rupees right now. But from October 20th onwards, okay, that is tomorrow, October 20th onwards, the rates are going to increase. Alright, so 1 month it is 8,000, and after the 10% deduction you will get it at 7,200. But from tomorrow or October 20th onwards, the rate is going to be 9,000. And after 10% deduction, you still have to pay 8,100. Okay, so 1 year course, you can imagine it is 44,000 right now. After deduction, 39,600. But from October 20th onwards, it is 49,500, which means you have to pay 44,550 after using my code MSRW. Okay, still you can use my code MSRW1 and get a 10% deduction. So if you are planning to take an Unacademy subscription, take it as soon as possible right now itself. Okay, now is a very good time to do that. Use this code also, MSRW1. Okay, so because tomorrow onwards the prices are going to increase. Alright, so based on the current prices, this basic package is known as the plus package. Okay, this is the name given to this package where you will be getting everything so far I have mentioned. Alright, and 1 year it's costing 44,000 rupees, 10% reduction upon using my code. 2-year prices are also shown here. Okay, again, upon using my code, 10% reduction is applicable. Then there is something called Iconic, Unacademy Iconic. This is exclusive for the UPSC aspirants. Okay, so what do you get here now? Over and above the plus package, you will also be getting some other specific things. For example, a personal coach. Alright, some person who will, an educator will be assigned to you as a personal coach, and he or she will be there to you as a guide, as a mentor, okay, throughout the exam preparation time. That is a personal coach. Then daily mains answer writing practice, very essential for your mains exam. Study planner, personalized feedback. You can avail all this if you go for the Iconic subscription. And the rates are shown here, 64,000 a year, 10% reduction applicable upon using my code MSRW1. Okay, 2-year also the rates are shown here. Please use my code for subscription. Clear? So this is basically about the Unacademy subscriptions. If you have any queries regarding this, you can ask me. I will help you through it. Okay. So yeah, you can also take a look at my channel in Unacademy where I have already posted some sessions. So feel free to watch some of them as well. Okay. So yeah, that is it basically about subscriptions and all. Now let's start our topic for the day. NCERT Class 8, our past 3. Okay, this is dealing with modern history. We have completed ancient history in standard 6, medieval India in standard 7, and now we are looking at modern history on class 8. Okay, so this is the first part of a 5-part series. Okay, till Friday this will be going on. Today the first 3 chapters would be completed. Alright, tomorrow there is a quiz. That is why I am taking 1 extra chapter today. Okay, tomorrow 1 chapter will be covered and there will be a quiz also in the Unacademy live app. Okay, so that is it. Welcome to this session and now let's begin. If you have any queries in the meanwhile, you can put it in the YouTube live chat. Okay, I will be taking a look at it after every couple of slides or so. So chapter 1, how, when and where. Okay, so you often see that if you go ask some friends of yours, okay, they will say history is one of the most boring subjects. Clear? Why is this? Most people say that history is boring because it's all about dates. Okay, lots and lots of dates you have to memorize. You have to memorize many names. All these are very confusing and hence it's very boring subjects. I don't want to study that. And most of you will drop it after 10th standard because now you have a choice. Okay, but these dates are very important. Why? Okay, so history is actually somebody's story. Correct? History can be split as his story, that is someone's story. Clear? So every story has to be said in a timely manner. It can, a story cannot start from the middle, or the story cannot happen from the end. It has to start from the beginning and then it has to, go on through a particular timeline and come to an end at the end. Okay, so time is very, very relevant for history. And these dates, okay, help us to put things into perspective in a chronological fashion. That is why dates are so important in history. Okay, so historical questions refers us back to the notion of time. So time is very important for our studies. Alright, but for example, sometimes certain events in history, say when did India get independence? That is, we know the exact date, August 15th, 1947. So the exact date, exact month, exact year is known to us. But if you ask some another question, okay, when did the Neolithic age start? Or say when did the Paleolithic age start? So if these kinds of questions are asked, it is a bit more confusing. I mean, you can roughly say Paleolithic age started around 12,000 BC. Okay, but that's all you can say. You cannot say it started on April 1st, 12,031 or something like that. Okay, now we have a broader range of period. Alright, then say if you are asked another question, when was the earth created? You have no idea. We can only say that it was probably 1 billion years ago. Okay, so date is important, but the history doesn't actually, we cannot cover the entire history based on dates only. We need some kind of perspective. Initially, history was studied as a, as an what? A set of dates. Okay, after a particular date, this happened. The next date, this. That was the initial way of studying history. But later on, historians started to look at it in a different way. Okay, they wanted to look at it like, when did this culture began, and how did the people start cooking, how did they start agriculture. So when people began to look at it on another perspective, dates are now less relevant compared to this timeline or the scale of time. Okay, so when we look at dates, okay, I'm not saying dates are not important, they are important, but when we look at it, how do we pick which of the dates are important and which are not? Okay, some dates are important, some dates are not. For example, for ourselves, okay, personally, my birthday is important to me. Okay, similarly, your birthday is important to yourself. So that date is particular because that was the day you are born. But some other day, say, what was, 2003 August 16. If I ask you that, you have no idea what happened in that date in your life. Okay, because it might be because nothing important happened personally for us. Similarly, when we study history, we pick and choose certain dates that are important and we omit a lot of other dates. So how do we pick, or how do we see which is important and which is not? Okay, so there are a set of criteria which allows us to choose what is important and what is not. See this, here we can see a picture of Warren Hastings, who is our first Governor General of India. Okay, and he is the first Governor General, so he is very important to us, and we know the exact date when he got in and when he left the office. Similarly, look at here, another example. This is an advertisement from the 18th century about a very famous tea. Okay, it's known as the Lipton tea. Very famous tea. Okay, at that time. So why am I showing you this? Because from this advertisement, some 200 years before, we get to know a lot about the society as well. Okay, based on their advertisement, we can see that Lipton tea is not just in India or not just in Britain. It is all over the world. So we can understand that tea is a very, demandful beverage all across the globe. People use tea in a wide fashion. Okay, also look at the figure here. A man is sitting on a horse. Okay, and some part of an Indian palace is shown in the background. What does this mean? This also means that these kinds of architecture existed there, and horses were predominantly used by soldiers. So we can get a lot of information based on these kinds of things. Okay, and because this was published some 200 years ago, we can place this exactly at a particular point in history. Okay, so if our focus of study changes, if we begin to look at new issues, a set of new dates will appear. Correct now? If you look at your, say, history textbook, okay, and you are studying about, say, Mughals, okay, you are studying about Mughals, and after studying through the Mughals, from Babur till Aurangzeb, you studied, okay. But if you turn one more page in your textbook, you will see that the next topic will be administration under the Mughals. Right? I mean, we have already covered the entire Mughals, and now we are going back to administration in the Mughals. Why? Because once we looked at it in a political fashion, when we study the events of Mughal period in a political fashion, we start from Babur and go all the way to Aurangzeb. But the moment we turn the page and see this administrative setup under the Mughals, we are looking at the same society, same time period in a different fashion, through a different spectacles. After studying administration, we are going to study the economy of Mughals. Okay, that is something new. We are studying the same period with various perspectives. Okay, so each time we look at it in a different way, we have to look for, a new set of dates will come to us. Okay, something will have happened in the administrative era, so that particular date will be very important there. But when we look at it in an economic perspective, some other things would have happened in a different date. Okay, so the way in which we study history also determines what is important for us. Alright, So when we write history or a story, we divide it into chapters. This is also the reason why it's done so. Okay, if you look at your prominent textbooks, R.S. Sharma, Satish Chandra, Biban Chandra, all these textbooks, they are divided the history into various chapters. Nobody will start from like 1857 all the way to 1947 as a single story, because it cannot be done like that. We have to look at each and everything through multiple spectacles. Okay, so this is why dates are very important. Hello Saubhagya. This is a very basic chapter. Okay, I mean, don't think that this is not important for your UPSC. This is important for your mains exam. Alright, first chapter is very small, only 3-4 slides are there. After that we will start with really prelims oriented stuffs. At that time you will get to write many points and all. Okay, anyway, how do we periodize history? Okay, so in 1817, James Mill, a Scottish economist and a political philosopher, he actually wrote a book. Okay, a Scottish economist named James Mill in 1817. Remember this period. Okay, 1817 means what? East India Company is still in rule, British is colonizing India, and nothing like 1857 revolt etc. happened very late only. Okay, so British is the dominant power right now, and this is the time when James Mill wrote a history textbook. This was very massive. Okay, 3-volume textbook. Do you know how he classified Indian history? He classified Indian history as into 3 periods. Okay, first period, Hindu period, then Muslim period, and finally British period. Okay, so ancient India he classified as Hindu period, medieval India he classified as Muslim period, and modern India he classified as British period. This is how he divided history of India. Now what is the problem here? Many of the Western historians actually convert to this theory, convert to this classification, but many Eastern as well as many Indian historians actually were against this. Why? Very simple. According to James Mill, India was actually a very backward society until the British came. So he used this British history instead of modern history, because he thought that only the arrival of British has caused some civilizational enhancement in India. Until then, India was a very backward, very pathetic society. Okay, so ancient India is considered as a Hindu society because predominantly all the dynasties, the Mauryas, the Guptas, Vardhanas, all were Hindus. Okay, medieval India, the rule of Delhi Sultanate and Mughals, it is classified as Muslim history. Again, the problem, look at the problem here. Medieval India, they are saying only Mughals, and he is actually viewing Indian history as a Mughal period or a Delhi Sultanate period. But there were Hindu kingdoms as well. Vijayanagara Empire is there. There are many regional kingdoms here, and Rajputs, Marathas, they were all part of the medieval society. Na? So this is the issue when we classify or when we use religion to determine the periods in history. So this is a very dangerous classification. Even now, right now, in the current society of India, this kind of classification has gained some ground. Okay, when people say, people praise the ancient India, it is naturally thought that they are praising Hinduism. And when people say that it is the medieval India was very stagnant for India, people always think that it is Muslim rule, so Muslims caused this stagnation in India. This is wrong. This kinds of religious classification cannot be taken into account. Okay, then comes another kind of classification: ancient, medieval, and modern. Okay, instead of Hindu, Muslim, and British history, people have started using the terms ancient India, medieval India, modern India. We are also using the same. Na? Our own history textbooks have these kinds of words. Here also there is a problem. Why? Look at this word, modern. What does this word modern means? Modern means, according to the Western thought, the word modern is associated with the rise in technology. Okay, and this the impact of technology that is having on the civilization. That is the that is why this word modern is so relevant. But saying that modern Indian history starts from say end of Mughals or say 1857 onwards, then what is the problem? Same problem. And it is like saying that until then India was backward. or India lacked technology, or India was very behind in all kinds of advancements. Okay, so we cannot actually divide history based on some particular arbitrary words as such. We have to look at it at a broader perspective. Okay, so one of the chief sources of us studying dates or periods or etc. are the administrative records. One of the greatest things as far as the British is concerned is that wherever they went, they kept a proper record. Okay, they might have been here to trade at the beginning. So at that time they had the trade accounts. Later on they started colonizing, they started getting Diwani of certain areas, they started annexing kingdoms, etc. etc. Each time they did something, they kept a proper official record. Okay, so we get a lot of information from the British administration records. Also, here also some issues are there. Okay, I mean they have written it very cleanly, very neatly, and they have associated a records department or a records room with all the administrative institutions. If they started a bank, then there is a records room in the bank. If they have a collectorate, then that collectorate will have a records room. So proper record keeping was awesome in British times. Later on, important records as well as manuscripts were kept in archives and museums. Okay, so British associated that much importance to art of writing and keeping proper records. They even used calligraphists. Who are calligraphists? People who writes very beautifully and all. You have seen these manuscripts written very beautifully in a very cursive manner and all. So those kinds of people who are into writing are known as calligraphers. Okay, and the art of such artistic writing is known as calligraphy. Okay, also by the time printing came into fore, British started to use more and more printing methods in order to keep their records. So we have adequate source of information as far as British or the colonial era is concerned. All right. Also, this is around the same time when surveys also became very important. So the practice of surveying became very common during this time. Okay, this was one of the policies of Britain. If they are going to conduct trade at some place, or if they are going to rule or administer a certain area, they need to know everything about that area before they do that. Okay, this was British perspective. Just think about the way East India Company came to India, or the way British actually annexed the Indian states. They never went to a state blindly and started a war. Initially, they started negotiation. Then they study the territory which they are going to annex. Then they look into what all are the social issues, economic issues, etc., etc. Slowly they build up knowledge or information regarding that area, and then they attack. This is the strategy of England always, and this is why they are very, very successful. Okay, many times Indians did not do this. They blindly went for a war, but Britain was ready every time they came to war, because they collected as much information as possible beforehand itself. Okay, so early 19th century onwards, this detailed surveys have been carried out. All right, from the 1800s onwards, proper surveys has been kept. What all kinds of surveys are there? Geographical surveys, for example, topography, the soil quality, flora, fauna, local history, cropping pattern, all these have to be studied. Later, British came with the permanent settlement system, Raitwari system, the Mahalwari system. So if they have to come with such revenue settlements, then they have to know how much is the productivity of that place, how well agriculture can happen in that place. So soil study is very important. Okay, similarly, they have to study about the local histories. If they have to rule a place, then they have to know about the prevailing laws there. Muslims had a set of law at that time, Hindus had a different set of law. So they have to understand all these things. So they conducted surveys to gather all kinds of information. Okay, and then by the end of the 19th century, they started the census operation. So why is census so important? Census is important because this is when you actually study the population. After conducting a census, we can know how many are Hindus, how many are Christians, how many are Muslims, so and so. Also, how many are one particular subcaste of Hindus, how many are another particular subcaste. Okay, so we get a detailed demographic analysis if you go for a census. Okay, so this census operation also helped Britain a lot. Imagine what happened in 1857 and later on in 1905, the partition of Bengal. Okay, the divide and rule policy. How was British able to understand what is going on between Hindus and Muslims? Okay, they are a foreign power. Only if they study the Indian society would they understand that these two factions are at loggerheads. Okay, so they were able to exploit these differences beautifully during the time of Lord Curzon, because they studied Indian society that much well, and they were able to use it to their advantage whenever they seem fit. Okay, so other than these kinds of surveys, we have other surveys as well, like the botanical surveys, zoological surveys, archaeological surveys, anthropological surveys, forest surveys. Okay, so archaeological surveys, this is when people actually found Harappa, Mohenjo-daro and other important ancient civilizations. Botanical survey led to the discovery of numerous plants, exotic and endemic to India. Zoological surveys as well. Okay, so all these activities were actually started by the British in India. So now we know that we have proper records of that time. We have reliable records to some extent. The getting resources is not that difficult. In ancient India, getting resources is very difficult. We have some inscriptions, some coins, some literature here and there. That's it. A continuity is very, very hard. But since the colonial period, we have ample number of resources. Then what is our problem? The problem is that these records are kept in the perspective of the officials, the official thoughts. Okay, we do not know our perspective. I mean, what did the Indians say? What is the Indians' perspective as far as these are concerned? Whenever we study an English record, it is the English view of India, the Western view of India, not the Indian perspective. Okay, so even if you look at the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, Indians all despised it. Some of the Britishers also did that. But there were a section of the society in the Britain which actually went along with what Colonel Dyers did. Okay, so if those were the people who wrote these records, then actually Jallianwala Bagh would be justified. Clear? Although it was a terrible massacre, if the Westerners actually wrote these records, then it would have been justified because it is their point of view. Alright, so this is one of the huge drawback of relying on administrative records, because it was official view, not the commoner's view, not the Indian view. Alright, so these records do not help us understand on what the country or the people felt. Okay, so another, we can go for some other sources here. For example, diaries of people, accounts of pilgrims, travelers, autobiographies of important personalities, the popular booklets, etc. that were sold in local bazaars. These are not Western. If you go for travelers, we have travelers from various countries. We have travelers from Portuguese, Spain, Italy, China, so etc. etc. Also, the autobiographies are most of the autobiographies are Indian only. If you go for Babar Nama, it is Babar only wrote that. Akbar Nama, Abul Fazl wrote it, but still it is Indian. Okay, so we can rely on these kinds of things. Here also there is a small issue. What is the issue? These people who have kept these records or travelogues, etc., are very influential people. They are the upper classes of the society. They are the ruling class. They are the powerful and rich class. Okay, they are looking at India from the palaces, from the monuments, not the common man's perspective. Okay, remember in the previous class I told you the Mughal era is considered as the golden age of India. Okay, but it is the golden age only if you look at it in the perspective from the ruler. But if you look at the misery that was happening in the rural areas, we cannot say it is a golden age, because poverty and all kinds of bad stuff existed even then in the lower sections of the society, in the rural sections of the society. Okay, so that is the issue here also. Whenever a record is written, it is written from the upper class perspective, not the common man, not the poor people. Okay, so as printing spread, newspapers, etc. were published, and all these sources were produced by those who were literate. Later also in the modern India, the Indian intelligentsia printed lots and lots of pamphlets. They printed new newspapers, etc. etc. All these were actually done by educated intelligentsia of India. Okay, not by the peasant, not by the common man. So we cannot understand the exact nature of things from any of these records. We have to take a pause and we have to guess out what would have the peasants thought, what would have the local the common man thought. Okay, so these are the issues as far as relying on records are concerned. So in the first chapter, what we saw about the importance of studying history, importance of studying dates, what are the challenges on doing so, and how much can we rely on these kinds of records. Okay, this is the beginning. This is the just a pretext to get you in. Now onwards, we are going to really start the modern Indian society. Okay, from trade to territory, the company establishes power. How East India Company came to India and how they slowly started trading, then gained monopoly, and finally started taking territories. Okay, that is what this chapter is going to deal with. Let's start. Official record. Yeah, Saubhagya, official record thing is very simple. Official records are kept by whom? Official records are kept by, here you can see this. Okay, official records are kept by people who are the administrators or who works in the British offices. So those people who write these official records are Westerners, Britishers. So they look into India in their perspective, not the Indian perspective. Okay, so if we say, if we look at a British record and say that, there is huge productivity in India and lots of taxes are gained from this particular region, then that is one perspective. The other perspective could be the productivity is less, but the farmers are cruelly oppressed and forced to pay their taxes. Okay, so by official thought, I mean that we cannot rely on it completely because it is one perspective. The Western perspective. We do not have any Indian perspective there. That's it. So let's start with the second chapter. The company establishes power. Alright. So you know how this happened. The Mughal emperor Aurangzeb, the last of the greatest Mughals, okay, was Aurangzeb. And after his death, the Mughal dynasty started disintegrating and it completely was wiped out in 1857. But we haven't reached there yet. We are in 1600, Queen Elizabeth I gave a charter to the East India Company which gave them complete monopoly to trade with the East. Okay, they can go to any country in the East, India or some other country, Indonesia, wherever they want, they can go and they have absolutely complete monopoly over the trade as per this charter. Okay, so this was a time when India was witnessing the decline of the Mughal dynasty. And when Aurangzeb died and Mughal power became weak, many local kingdoms started to emerge here and there. So we saw many regional kingdoms starting to spring up. Marathas, for example. Once the Mughal control was lower, Marathas became powerful. Similarly, in the Deccan region, many kingdoms, Golconda, Ahmednagar, Bijapur, so and so. Okay, so this was a perfect time for the British to gain foot in India. Okay, if they came to India and they faced some a very powerful dynasty completely controlling the subcontinent, then that would have been difficult for them. Okay, really strong dynasty is hard to penetrate. But India was divided into many regional kingdoms, and this division and fighting with each other gave British the perfect opportunity to start their Indian campaign. Okay, and they came as a very small trading company. They came in 1600, but eventually they set up factories here and there, Surat, various Calcutta, etc. And they started very small. Okay, but eventually they gained a lot of power. So in I told you this part already. Okay, in 1600, East India Company acquired the charter from Queen Elizabeth I, granting it the sole right to trade with the East. Very important, not with India, but with the East. So any Eastern country they can go and they have complete monopoly over the trade. Okay, but the problem was from England only this company can trade. Only this company has monopoly. But there are other countries in Europe. Portugal is there. We have Spain. We have French. We have Danes. Okay, we have Dutch. Okay, so all these kinds of countries were also in competition. They also wanted trade. All right. So mercantile trading companies in those days made profit primarily by excluding competition. Okay, once this monopoly was obtained by this charter, British East India Company was free. They do not have to compete with anyone else from England. Okay, so they can gain absolute 100% market share, assuming there are no other competitors. So this is one of the main methods by which the trading companies used to make profit. They used to buy things very cheaply and then sell it at a very high cost. In Indian context also, just think about it. The cotton cloth that was brought from India, or say the pepper that they got from India, they brought it at very cheap rates and they sold it in Europe at a very high cost. Okay, so this is known as the mercantilism. Okay, very important term here, mercantilism. Buying cheap and selling dear. Okay, buying cheap and selling dear. This is known as mercantilism. Okay, so when British came to India with their monopoly and all, they thought that they are going to be the first. But no, Portuguese was here already. Vasco da Gama came to India back in 1498 itself. And he familiarized the Europe with pepper and cardamom and other spices. So the British were not the first Europeans in India. Okay, Portuguese had already established their base in a place called Goa. Okay, so the problem was that all these companies were interested in the same things. They are all Europeans. All of them wanted spices. All of them wanted silk. All of them wanted cotton. Okay, everyone were, completely focused on same set of products, not different ones. So the competition started to rise up. English also want pepper, Portuguese also want pepper, French also want pepper. So the competition rose. So when the demand increases, what will happen? When competition increase, demand increase. Okay, so demand increase, what will happen? The price will increase. Correct na? If 10 people want the same thing, then what will happen? That thing's price will go up. This is how the stock markets and all work. No? Exact same way. When the demand increases, price increases. So this competition has started to push up prices. So if the price is pushed up, what will happen? They will have to buy at a higher price and then sell it somewhere else. So the profit will go down. Earlier, they bought it at a small price and sold it at a higher price. So they used to get lots and lots of profit. But now the price has gone up. So what happened? They have to buy it at a relatively higher rate and they have to sell it in the same rate. So the profit reduced. And this reduction in profit started to cause friction between various trading companies. They started to fight each other to gain dominance, to eliminate the rival. Okay, and this is the time when companies started to become militarized. Clear? Trade was carried on with arms. Okay, the English trading company was in fight with the French company. French company was in fight with Portugal. Portugal was in fight with the Dutch. Okay, everybody started to compete and everybody started to use arms and military to gain dominance. Okay, and eventually they started fortification. They started to build forts. You know about this, na? In the Madras we have this William Fort, then St. George. Then in Calcutta we have Fort William. Okay, so these kinds of fortifications started to come up. This effort to fortify these settlements actually caused trouble with the local Rajas. Okay, the trading companies are in fight with each other to gain more profit, and so they created these forts and all to save their own trade, etc. But if you go to someone else's land and construct a fort there, will the Rajas at that place stay quiet? No. So they started to interfere with business. They said, no, you can't build fort, you can't do all these things. You have to pay a particular duty if you want to trade here. Okay, so the local Rajas came into the fore and they started interfering with the companies. And this caused a huge mess. Okay, now we have many stakeholders in this place. We have the European companies, we have the local Indian Rajas lined up in the other area. Okay, so this is how the conflict actually begins. This is how a company that has come to trade slowly started militarizing and eventually threatening Indian independence. Okay, so this is the way in which British colonized India. Okay, so we know that all these powers came to India, and the most successful among them were the British. British managed to eliminate every competitor and finally made themselves as the supreme power in India. But how did they start? They set up their first factory in the banks of River Hooghly in Calcutta in 1651. This was the first English factory, fortified factory in India. Okay, and the company's traders were known as factors. Very important term. Okay, who are these factors? Factors are nothing but the company's traders, English traders of the company. They are known as factors. All right. So in order to boost this trade and mercantilism, what did they do now? They actually attracted many manufacturers from here and there, and they asked these manufacturers to come and settle down close to the company building. Okay, they established their first factory in Hooghly, near the river Hooghly, and they asked these manufacturers and producers to come and settle near this company, near this factory. And then what did they do now? They erected a fort there. Okay, the very famous Fort William in Calcutta was erected like that. Around this settlement, they started erecting this fort. So they are preserving all of them. These producers are there, companies there, the machinery, etc. All are safeguarded from external threat. This is how British started. Okay, but 2 years later, they also bribed some Mughal officials and they earned some zamindari rights over 3 villages. Okay, what is this zamindari right? Zamindari right means the right to collect taxes. Okay, right to collect taxes. So they bribed the Mughal officials and they earned the right to collect taxes from 3 Indian villages. Okay, and one of these is the Kalikata. Okay, Kalikata is our Calcutta. Right now we call it as Calcutta or Kolkata, whatever. Okay, so this is how they started to expand. This is how they started to settle down. Remember, even at this point, the company is in no mood to administer. Okay, they do not want to rule India or anything. All they want to do is earn profit and do what is good for their trade. That's it. Clear? They asked for zamindari rights. They did not ask for rulership or anything. Okay. Now, Aurangzeb is still alive. He hasn't been dead yet. Okay. So during the time of Aurangzeb, he also issued a farman. The company succeeded in persuading Aurangzeb to issue a farman. Farman means royal order. Okay. If you don't know what a farman is, it is a royal order. So the company was successful in persuading Aurangzeb to issue a royal order, saying that the company's trade is duty free. Okay, company do not have to pay any kind of duty for its trade. This is very good, no? I mean, all the trade is duty free, which means the company can actually get more and more profits. Okay, this was the aim of the company. I told you, they eliminated their rivals so that they can monopolize the trade and increase their profit. And now they have eliminated the duty as well, which means even more profit. Okay, but there was one problem here. Aurangzeb said company's trade is duty free. He did not say company's officials can conduct private trade and that too is duty free. Okay, company's officials were extremely corrupt. Okay, rather than helping the companies to expand, what did they do now? They used to do private trade on them by themselves. And these officers, these English officers, tried to use this farman to protect their trade. But Aurangzeb understood that this is not going to work. So he said this is applicable to the company's trade only. For private trade, you have to pay duty. Okay, otherwise it's not possible. Clear? This is very important. This question can come in prelims. Okay, this Aurangzeb's farman do not prevent British officials from paying the duty. Okay, so you have to understand this. Later on, the company went bankrupt, and these companies' officials were extremely rich because of the same reason. It was extremely corrupt, and companies' accounts went down, and these private trading people now gained more and more profit. Okay, so now the company's officials are angry. Okay, they have to pay duty, which means their profit is not that much increasing, so they are angry with the Indians. Clear? So in the early 18th century, there occurred a conflict between the company and Bengal, the Nawabs of Bengal. Okay, the Aurangzeb has died. The later Mughals has started to disintegrate their own kingdom. Local Rajas started to spring up, and Bengal was ruled by a group of kings known as Nawabs. Okay, and Nawabs also tried to protect their kingdom, their financial areas. Okay, and they also started to impose duty on these private trades. So the company went into conflict with these Nawabs. Okay, and Murshid Quli Khan, okay, was followed by Alivardi Khan and Sirajud-Dowla as the Nawab of Bengal. So Murshid Quli Khan is the person who actually founded Bengal kingdom. I have already taught you this in the Friday session. Murshid Quli Khan is the person who established the Bengal province. Okay, after him the rule was taken by Alivardi Khan and then to Sirajud-Dowla. Okay, so this is the line of strong rulers who ruled the Bengal region, and all of them were actually against this British method of gaining profit by undue means, by without paying duty. Okay, so they refused to give this concession to the company. They demanded that a company should pay large amount of duty to them. The company is not allowed to mint coins on their own. They should not fortify their factory. These kinds of impositions were put on the company by these Rajas. So the company obviously were angry with them, and they wanted to free themselves from all this control. Okay, and this fight eventually led into the Battle of Plassey. You remember the Battle of Plassey, na? 1757, Sirajud-Dowla versus Robert Clive. So this is the pretext to that battle. Company wanted to increase trade, increase their profit, and the local Rajas were actually causing an inhibition to that idea. So they went into the battle. That is what happened. Okay, so the Battle of Plassey, how did that go? Alright, so the PDF, one thing in between I have to tell you, the PDF solve will be available in my Telegram channel. Please do subscribe to that. Okay, here is my Telegram channel link. You can look at that. Also, please use my code MSRW1 to get 10% off in Unacademy subscriptions. I am saying this because tomorrow onwards the Unacademy subscription rates are increasing. Okay, I told you at the beginning. To anyone who has joined late, I am repeating it again. Okay. So the Battle of Plassey. I told you how the ground was set up for the battle. Now let's see what happened in the battle. Okay. So as I have already said, Murshid Quli Khan was actually followed by Alivardi Khan, and he was followed by Sirajud-Dowla, and now Sirajud-Dowla is the Nawab of Bengal. Okay, so the company actually wanted somebody as a puppet ruler there. Company wanted a ruler there who will grant anything what they ask for. Okay, but Sirajud-Dowla was not such a person. He was a very strong ruler, and he was more concerned about Bengal rather than to help the company. Okay, so Nawab, what did he do now? Sirajud-Dowla took an army and marched into the English factory at Qasim Bazar. Qasim Bazar was an English factory at that time. Okay, he marched to there. He overpowered the English, took away all their weaponries and all these things. And then after winning there, he marched all the way to Calcutta. Okay, Calcutta, where the company has this fort, Saint William. Okay, now that fort is also under the control of the Nawab. But what happened now? On hearing that the Calcutta has fallen, the British sent more troops under Robert Clive from Madras. Okay, English were a very strong naval power, if you remember, and British sent a huge navy, not that much huge, only limited number of soldiers, but they were extremely good and well disciplined. Okay, and such a force was sent along with Robert Clive all the way from Madras to Calcutta. Okay, and on 1757, Robert Clive led the company's army against Siraj-ud-Dawla in the Plassey. Okay, in the battleground of Plassey. And you know what happened. Siraj-ud-Dawla lost, Robert Clive won, and that is the first major victory of British in India. Okay, so actually what happened now, Siraj-ud-Dawla's army were actually more in number compared to Robert Clive. But still he lost. Why? Because this is actually this was an eye opener for the British. Why? Because they understood that doesn't matter how big the army is, a properly trained, well-disciplined army can actually beat a higher number of Indian contingent. Okay, Robert Clive had only limited number of men, but they were properly trained, they had superior arms. So such a small unit can actually overpower a large number of army as far as they are not properly trained. So this is an eye-opener for British in India. In their future conquest, they use the same principle. Wherever they go with a well-trained, disciplined army. That's it. Small in number, but more efficient. Okay. But here, something else also happened. Siraj-ud-Dawla was actually cheated by his own people. Okay. A person called Mir Jafar, who used to lead one contingent of Siraj-ud-Dawla's army, he never even battled against British. He was a traitor and he chose to side with the British. Okay, Mir Jafar. And in return for this service by Mir Jafar, British made Mir Jafar the next Nawab of Bengal. Clear? So Siraj-ud-Dawla was assassinated, and in his place, Mir Jafar was placed in the throne by the British. Okay, now British thought that, now we are the people who gave Mir Jafar the power, so he will be a puppet. Mir Jafar also, played like a puppet in the beginning. But after some time, he too started to feel this, control all over him. And there is a point beyond which a man cannot lose his dignity. Now he is the ruler, so he has to care about his people also. Okay, so Mir Jafar said, okay, enough is enough. You people gave me the power, that is fine. But now I cannot completely go by what you say. I have to take care of my people as well. Okay, so when Mir Jafar started to take power on his own, company again interfered. They threw Mir Jafar out and then placed Mir Qasim on the throne. Okay, Mir Jafar was taken down by the company and Mir Qasim was put into the throne. Same thing happened again. Mir Qasim too, after some time, understood that the British controlling him is not good for the territory, not good for Bengal. So he has to do something about it. And so Mir Qasim allied with other powers in India at that time, Shuja-ud-Dawla and the Mughal Emperor Shah Alam II. These three rulers together fought a battle with Britain. And this battle is known as Battle of Buxar, 1764. Okay, after Plassey, they installed some puppet Nawabs in between. But these Nawabs, understanding that the control is not good for their country, they started to react. And Battle of Buxar was the culmination of that reaction. Okay, so Mir Qasim, Shah Alam II and Shuja-ud-Dawla together attacked the British power at Buxar in 1764. This was one of the most decisive battles in Indian history because this completely changed the course of war, course of British establishment in India. Now, British understood. Why? No? Because British understood that there is no point in placing a puppet ruler. Okay, because every time you keep a puppet ruler, after some time he takes control of himself. So no more keeping puppets here and there. Instead of that, it is time for us to take control of ourselves. We are going to take control all by ourselves. So this is the changing point. Battle of Buxar is the changing point in the British perspective of how to administer India. Okay, so after the Battle of Buxar, Mir Jafar was actually reinstalled. Mir Qasim was taken out and Mir Jafar, who was a very old person by that time, he was actually reinstalled by the British. Okay, but after winning this, remember one of the parties in the Battle of Buxar was Shah Alam II, the Mughal emperor. Okay, so when they won against the Mughals, which is the most prominent dynasty at that time, the company actually got the Diwani of the provinces in Bengal. Okay, so this is very important. Why? Because until this point, all the expenses in India, okay, I told you the British is buying goods from India and selling it at a higher rate at Britain. Okay, so until now, this buying power, this buying money was taken from Britain. Okay, they had to buy, means get gold from Britain, buy it from Indian local markets and take it back to Britain. That is how they has to do. But now they got the Diwani of Bengal region, which means they can buy all these goods with Indian money itself. Okay, there is no need to bring money from Britain. Using the Diwani rights in India, they can collect taxes from people and use these taxes to buy the raw materials. So Indian money used to buy Indian things. Okay, so this is how the drain starts, the economic drain. The very famous economic drain starts like this. Using Indian money to buy Indian goods and selling it at Britain. This is a one-way trade. Usually how a trade happens between A and B. A will have to give money to B and B will give the goods to A. This is how the normal trade happens. But now what is happening? A is taking money from B and using that to pay the goods he buys. So B is losing everything. A is gaining without losing anything. Okay, so this is the one-way trade. This is the economic drain that has started happening in India. Clear? Any doubts? No. So companies, officials becoming Nawabs. Okay, so we know the word Nawab. Nawab means what? The ruler of Bengal, or the ruler of, generally it is a term used to signify the ruler. Okay, so what happened now? After these battles and after all these things, the company's officials started to live like Nawabs. They are earning lots and lots of profit. They do not have to pay duty. They do not have to bring money from Britain. They can use the local money to pay for their goods. So the company officials were extremely rich. Okay, so they started to live a life like the Nawabs, like the kings, like the rulers. And for this reason, they are called as Nabobs. Okay, people started to make fun of them in Britain and used to call them Nabobs. Okay, so let's look at these points. After the Battle of Plassey, the actual Nawabs were forced to give land and vast sum of money as personal gift to the company officials, and they started living like Nawabs. So when these governors and governor general and all this, governor general is not in place at the moment. Now we have only governors. So when these governors went back to the country, their country, Britain, people used to make fun of them because they are quick money earners. They came to India as nothing. They came to India as just officials, and now they are back to Britain as wealthy, very rich people. Okay, so British people understood that they gained all this wealth, they amassed all this wealth based on some illegal methods. Okay, and obviously when someone else makes more money, you will get jealous. So British people started to become jealous of these people as well. Because of all these reasons, they started to brand these company people as Nabobs, and they started to socially, alienate them as a separate category, as they started to look down upon them. Okay, and use this word Nabob. So they were often seen as upstarts and social climbers in British society and were ridiculed or made fun of in public plays and cartoons. Okay, so the company's officials were earning a very bad name in Britain because of their activities in India. Okay, now as I have mentioned so far, the company has finally managed to get the Diwani of Bengal region, and they have started to expand their trade. Now let's see how they have further expanded to other provinces in India. Okay, so the company rarely launched a direct military attack on an unknown territory. I explained the reason at the beginning, if you remember, in the first chapter. Okay, English company never go to a battle blindly. Before they go to a battle, they will try out everything else, diplomatic channels, economic channels, political channels. Only after exhausting all these things will they go for a military attack. This was one of the best decisions of the company that helped them to conquer the majority area of India. Okay, so political, economic and diplomatic methods has been extended initially before going for a military attack. But after the Battle of Buxar, the company started appointing residents in Indian states. This is a very important statement. I have seen the exact statement in many prelims question papers, mock test series. Okay, after the Battle of Buxar, the company started appointing residents in Indian states. In the prelims, the question can come like, after the Battle of Plassey, the company started appointing residents. No, wrong. It is the Battle of Buxar. Okay, so what does this residents do? One resident is kept in all the important kingdoms. Okay, so initially they were kept to understand their kingdom in order to influence them diplomatically, etc., etc. But as time went on, these residents started to interfere with internal affairs of the Indian states. Okay, we have many residents across the country. In Travancore we have in Hyderabad, etc. Every kingdom we have a resident, and this resident started interfering with the internal affairs, like who will rule after the current king dies, how to split the kingdom if there are multiple, successors, etc., etc. Okay, and this caused them to come in conflict with the Indian rulers even more. Okay, and then they came up with a new idea called the subsidiary alliance. This one, very familiar theory, subsidiary alliance. A contingent of British army is kept in the kingdom in order to protect that kingdom from external threat. Okay, but the problem was that in subsidiary alliance, the current ruler had to disband his army. Okay, say for example, take Hyderabad. Okay, if subsidiary alliance is imposed on Hyderabad, it means Hyderabad will have to disband its army. Okay, and a British contingent unit will be placed in Hyderabad. Also, this British unit has to be given payment by the Hyderabad ruler, not by the British. British says that they are keeping this army for the protection of Hyderabad ruler, so he only has to pay for that army. Okay, but in reality, that was not the case. In reality, it was more like taking control of that particular territory by the British. Okay, their army is already disbanded. Now British can, quickly take on any territory where they have a subsidiary alliance in place. That was the idea. Okay, so these are the expansionist methods that they used. But one particular person was against this, especially in South India. Okay, here and there, some conflicts started to occur. And the most important, or one of the most notable persons who resisted all this nonsense is Tipu Sultan, also known as the Tiger of Mysore. Okay, so Mysore is a South Indian kingdom which is actually ruled by two very famous personalities, Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan. Okay, Hyder Ali and his son Tipu Sultan. They together ruled about, say, 30 years. And during these 30 years, British had huge headache in South India. They were actually that good. Okay, now, why did Mysore come in conflict with British? Mysore came in conflict with British because Mysore was the country, or Mysore was the territory which actually controlled the trade with Malabar coast. Malabar coast means Kerala coast. Okay, the South India, the Kerala coast is known as Malabar coast. And this is the region from where British used to buy pepper and cardamom. I told you they were extremely, eager for the Indian spices, especially pepper and cardamom. And pepper and cardamom are brought from the Malabar coast. And this coast is controlled by Mysore. Okay, so in 1785, Tipu Sultan stopped the export of sandalwood, pepper and cardamom through his kingdom by disallowing the merchants of company. Okay, so Tipu Sultan decided to put a stop to the British trade in the Malabar coast. And this is how the relationship between Britain and Mysore started to become tainted. Also, Tipu Sultan was more attracted towards the French. Okay, he actually brought in a French commander to train his own army in Western methods. Also, he joined the Jacobin Club, which is actually a French club. Okay, so French were actually the natural enemies of Britain, even in Europe. If you remember, the Carnatic Wars, similarly the 7 Years' War, etc., etc., are fought between Britain and France. because they were natural enemies from for a very long time. They were like that only. Okay, so when Tipu Sultan got close with French, the British started to dislike this relationship and they started to come in conflict with Mysore. Okay, and there were many battles between Britain and Mysore, exactly 4. Okay, and after the 4th battle, Tipu Sultan lost. And this battle happened in a place called Srirangapattanam. Okay, Srirangapattanam, and the battle is known as the Battle of Srirangapattanam. And this ended with the company ultimately winning a victory. In the first Mysore War, Hyder Ali defeated the British. Second Mysore War was actually nowhere. Okay, no one won. Third Mysore War again, no clear winner. But in the 4th one, it was a decisive victory by the British over the Mysore Sultans. Okay, Tipu Sultan lost, British won. And Mysore was placed under the former rulers or the former ruling dynasty named Vodayars. Okay, Tipu Sultan was dethroned and another old ruling family named the Vodayars were placed in the throne by British. Also, a subsidiary alliance was imposed on the state, so that in future the Mysore will not ever go against the company because a British contingent is in the Mysore capital. Okay, so this is how British managed to conquer the South Indian territory of Mysore. Clear? Now, after Mysore, after the Tipu Sultan saga, now we are going to look at how they conquered the Maratha region. Okay, another very famous power, the Marathas. Marathas were actually the one power which could have controlled the Indian subcontinent after the Mughals. Okay, after the Mughal dynasty lost its power, Marathas were the only dynasty in India who were powerful enough to control the entire India. But they couldn't do that. Why? Because they failed a very important battle known as the Third Battle of Panipat in 1761. Have you seen that movie, Panipat? Panipat movie by Ashutosh Gawarikar. Okay, that movie explains this battle. Ahmad Shah Abdali vanquished Maratha power in Panipat. And this ended the dreams of Maratha chiefs to rule entire India. Okay, Maratha power was shattered at the end of this battle. And later on, okay, Marathas managed to regroup to some extent. And this was done by the leadership of Peshwa. Okay, Peshwa means Prime Minister. He was the prime ruler of the Maratha kingdom. Okay, after the Battle of Panipat, Marathas split into many confederacies. Scindias are there, Holkars are there, Bonsles are there. Okay, different factions, different confederacies. And this confederacy was headed by Peshwa. Peshwa was the most important among all these chiefs. Okay, and two other personalities are very important at this time. They are known as Mahatji Scindia and Nana Fadnis. Okay, Mahatji Scindia and Nana Fadnis are two very prominent personalities around this time in Maratha kingdom. So here also British came in conflict with the Marathas based on same reasons. They wanted to annex or they wanted to interfere in the local politics. Marathas were against that. Eventually went to battle. Okay, so the first war happened in 1782 and ended with a treaty known as Treaty of Salbai. Very important, remember the name, Treaty of Salbai. Okay, and this war was not that much convincing. Okay, nobody actually won. It was more of a deadlock. Alright, no clear winner. Then, after 20 years, okay, after 20 years, in 1803, the second Maratha battle, the second Anglo-Maratha war happened. And this time, British actually ended up gaining Odisha and territories north of Yamuna, including Agra and Delhi. Huge victory for English. Marathas were not actually destroyed, but still English ended up with the gaining side. Okay, you are gaining Delhi and Agra, man. That is huge, na? So this is a clear diplomatic victory or strategic victory of English as well. Remember, after the first battle, according to the Treaty of Salbai, peace was ensured between England and Marathas for a period of 20 years. Based on Treaty of Salbai, peace was ensured between the Marathas and British for 20 years. And this 20 years was beautifully used by British to make sure the next time you attack them, we are winning. Okay, so this is pure strategy from the British side. So although the first Maratha war ended in a deadlock, the treaty gaining that 20 years of peace with Marathas helped British a lot. Okay, and in 1817, after about 14 years since the second Maratha war, the third Anglo-Maratha war happened. And in this battle, the Marathas were crushed. The Peshwas were pensioned off and they were not anymore the leaders of Maratha power. Okay, thus the Maratha dynasty also came to an end. Now the British has power all over the South Indian region. Okay, now they have started their aggressive annexation policies. For example, in the early 19th century, companies started their territorial expansion and Lord Hastings was posted into India. Okay, you have to study about different governor generals. There is a list of governor generals and their important functions in your Spectrum textbook. Okay, in the Spectrum textbook, in the last part, there is a list of all the governor generals and the important events during that time. Please study them, very important. Okay, so Lord Hastings brought in the policy of paramountcy. So what is this policy of paramountcy? Just exactly the word meaning. Policy of paramountcy means British is the paramount power and all Indians are subordinate to the British. That's it. Okay, British is the supreme power. Every Indian power has to accept that suzerainty. That is the policy of paramountcy. Okay, and there were many people who resisted this. For example, in Kittur, okay, modern day Karnataka, there is a place called Kittur. And in Kittur, there was a very famous queen called Rani Chennamma. She resisted vigorously against British advancement. And when she was jailed, one of the peasants in Kittur regrouped the army and he went into battle. His name is Rayanna. But he was also arrested and later hanged to death. Okay, similarly, another important event that happened in the world history at this time is the rise of Russia. Okay, Russia started to expand in the international figure. And this time, Russia started to conquer more and more territories towards the South Asian region. So the British started to become, fearful, afraid. Because Russia can attack India anytime. And if that happens, then British is coming to direct conflict with Russia very soon. Okay, so in order to prevent this, British wanted a buffer zone between Russia and India. Okay, they want to create a buffer zone between Russia and India. And for this purpose, they annexed Afghanistan. They went to Afghanistan and then there was a war, there was a treaty. We will look into all that later. But understand that they tried to use Afghanistan as a buffer in order to prevent a possible Russian attack on India. Okay, there was a rumor that Napoleon Bonaparte and the Tsar of Russia together agreed to attack India at that time. Okay, to prevent this, they did all these things. It never materialized, but understand, this was the British thought. Okay, then on their way, they actually came into conflict with another very famous Raja called Maharaja Ranjit Singh, the Sikh Empire. Okay, Maharaja Ranjit Singh was extremely good. So British cannot defeat him. Okay, I mean the cost of that battle would have been very high. So what did they do now? They actually made a pact with Maharaja Ranjit Singh, the Treaty of Lahore, and based on that some understanding was made and they managed to successfully keep that peace with the Sikh kingdom for a very long time. But after the death of Maharaja in 1839, after two prolonged wars, the Sikh kingdom was also annexed to the British power in 1849. Okay, the Sikh kingdom, eventually Punjab, also were annexed with the East India Company's territories. Alright, now British has managed to conquer almost all major territories or all major powers in India. Mysore, Marathas, Sikhs. Okay, these were the prominent names at that time. All of them lost. Okay, and now comes a very famous personality Lord Dalhousie. Yes, Seema, Rani Chennamma, correct. Okay, so after this period comes Lord Dalhousie, who was in India from 1848 to 1856. Alright, and he brought in a policy called the Doctrine of Lapse. You know what a Doctrine of Lapse is, na? Doctrine of Lapse means if a kingdom or if a king dies without having a male heir, that kingdom is annexed with the company's territories. The company can decide what happens. Okay, so if an Indian ruler died without having a male heir, his kingdom would lapse and become a part of company's territory. Company decides who will rule now. That is basically what Doctrine of Lapse says. Okay, so based on this doctrine, they annexed Satara, Sambalpur, Udaipur, Nagpur, Jhansi, and later on Oudh. Okay, you have to remember, you have seen that movie, na? Manikarnika. That movie, if you have seen, Jhansi is annexed by the British by the same method, using the Doctrine of Lapse. The ruler of Jhansi died without having a male heir, and Jhansi ki Rani Lakshmi Bai, actually adopted a son. And British said, no, adopted sons cannot be assumed as a legal heir, and Jhansi has to be annexed. And this brought them into conflict, and you know what happened afterwards. Okay, so here is also a prelims question. Which is the first state in India that is annexed as a part of Doctrine of Lapse? Correct answer is Satara. Okay, Satara in 1848 was the first state in India that was annexed on the pretext of Doctrine of Lapse. Okay, now in 1856 the company took over Oudh. Okay, they annexed Oudh, and you know what was the reason given by the company? Not because of lacking a male heir or anything. They said that they are annexing Oudh because the Nawab is misgoverning that state. Misgovernment is given as the reason why British annexed Oudh. Look at how this would feel for the ruler. The ruler will be humiliated, na? Misgovernment, so the company is annexing it. Okay, so these kinds of weird reasons were used by British to annex one by one all the territories in India and together forming a huge colonial empire. Okay, you can see this figure here. Look at 1797. Okay, this is the map of 1797 India, and the yellow portion that you see here is the area under the British rule, and the red portion is the area not under British rule, some other rulers. Okay, so in 1797, this was the areas that were controlled by the British. Okay, very small portion in the Malabar coast, some portion in Tamil Nadu, then Madras, Coromandel coast, Calcutta, and some portion of UP. That's it. But by 1840, the map looks something like this. They have conquered Delhi, Marathas, Mysore. Apart from Mysore, everything else in South India. Okay, here the northeastern India and the eastern India. Alright, finally by the time of the revolt of 1857, the British had all these things, everything. Mysore, Marathas, then Calcutta, Delhi, Lucknow, Benares, Lahore, everything was annexed. And after a few more annexations, the entire Indian subcontinent will become British territory. Okay, so now they have a huge empire in India. Now, if you have an empire, what is the next step? You need to administer that empire. You have to set up policies. You have to set up governing structures. Okay. So, in order to do that, another Governor General, the first Governor General of India, was posted, named Warren Hastings. Warren Hastings is the first Governor General of India, and he came with lots and lots of new methods and policies. Okay, so during that time, there were 3 prominent provinces in India which were actually ruled by a governor. Okay, and these provinces are known as presidencies. Okay, there are normal provinces and presidencies. Presidencies are those provinces ruled by governor, and this governor is appointed by the Queen. Okay, and then you have the provinces which is administered by a lieutenant governor, And lieutenant governors are appointed by governor general, not queen. Okay, clearly understood the difference. I will write it down, very important for your prelims. You have presidencies and you have provinces. Okay, presidencies are governed by governor and his executive council. Okay, provinces are governed by lieutenant governors and his officers. Alright, governor is appointed by the crown in presidencies. Provinces, here lieutenant governors are appointed by the governor general. Okay, so in India there were 3 prominent presidencies, which are Bengal, Madras and Bombay. 3 presidencies: Bengal presidency, Madras presidency and Bombay presidency. Okay, so Warren Hastings came to India in 1772 as the first governor general, and he established the justice system. Okay, based on 2 courts. Okay, 2 courts are there. One is a criminal court known as the Faushdari Adalat, and the second one is a civil court known as the Diwani Adalat. Very important. Okay, so he started renovating the justice system. So 2 courts were established, a criminal court and a civil court. Criminal court is known as the Faushdari Adalat and civil court is known as the Diwani Adalat. Okay, so obviously British do not know any of the Indian customs or Indian rules, na? So they want some Indians to help them with the Indian laws. Okay, I mean you cannot rule Hindus and Muslims using Christian laws. That is not possible. So they wanted some people from the society to help them do that. Okay, for that purpose they used Maulavis and Hindu Pandits for interpreting Indian laws to the European district collectors as far as civil laws are concerned. Okay, they use the Maulavis and Hindu Pandits. They know all about the Indian laws, so they can tell them or interpret them to the British officers. Okay, in civil courts. In criminal courts also, Qazis and Muftis were also appointed under the supervision of collectors. These people will help them to interpret criminal laws in India. Okay, but what was the problem now? Problem was, within Hindus itself there were lots and lots of castes. Within Muslims itself there were divisions. So a central common law is not possible. One class of Hindus has one particular law, second class of Hindus has some other different law. Okay, so British said enough is enough, we have a huge empire now we want uniformity. Okay, to bring in that uniformity in 1775. Okay, in 1775, Warren Hastings called 11 Pandits. Okay, 11 Pandits from here and there, and he asked them to compile a digest of Hindu laws. One book that will govern everyone, every Hindu. Okay, so 11 Pandits. So each Pandit is from different Dharma Shastras. One Pandit is believes in one Shastra, second Pandit from different Shastra, third Pandit from different. So bringing them all together means a common law for entire Hindu population of India. Okay, and this was actually translated into English by a person called N.B. Halhed. Very important for prelims, N.B. Halhed. Okay, and later in 1778, same thing, same exercise was done for Muslim also. So now we have one common law for Hindus and one common law for Muslims. Okay, later in also in the Regulating Act of 1773, a new Supreme Court was also established. Although the Sadar Nizamat Adalat, which is an appeals court, was also set up in Calcutta. Don't worry if you do not understand this point here. We will look into detail when we study modern India. Regulating Act, many provisions are there. All are very important. We will look at it one by one at that time. For now, just understand that Supreme Court of India, or I mean not the current Supreme Court, but something like that. The first Supreme Court in India was established as a part of Regulating Act of 1773. Okay, so this is how the administrative setup in India started. Now they have control over the justice system. What next? The next job is to form an army. The company should have an army that will defend the entire territory of India. It cannot be done by solely Europeans. Right now the company army is completely Europeans. Okay, but if it is a small territory, that much people are enough. But now the company's territory is expanding throughout the Indian subcontinent. So they need more and more people to, defend this kingdom. Okay, so they started recruiting more and more officers. So the Mughal army was mainly composed of cavalry at that time. Mughals, okay, not the British, Mughals. You know about the Savar and all. Okay, and infantry, that is the Paidal or foot soldiers. They were given training in archery, known as Tir Andazai, and used well versed with sword also. These words are important. Okay, Savar means cavalry, Paidal means foot soldiers, and Tir Andasi means archery. UPSC can ask this question for match the following. Which of these are correctly matched? And they will match cavalry against Tir Andasi. Okay, you should be able to eliminate wrong options here. Okay, so during those olden times, cavalry was a very good, asset to have in an army. Using the horse and riding the horse, it is easy to battle and it is very much efficient compared to being a foot soldier. But as time went on, more and more weapons were introduced. For example, we have these guns, superior quality guns are there, artillery weapons are there. Now the cavalry is not the attractive option. Now the attractive option is foot soldiers. Okay, cavalry became less dominant and foot soldiers became more attractive to armies. So British started recruiting more and more Indian foot soldiers known as Sepoys. The Sepoy army. We know about the 1857 revolt as Sepoy mutiny. Na? Why is it called so? Because it is started by Sepoys. Sepoys are Indian foot soldiers. Okay, so these soldiers of the company's army had to keep pace with the changing military requirements, and infantry became the new important asset. Okay, infantry replaced the cavalry as the more important asset in the army. Okay, so soldiers were given European style training, European style discipline, etc., etc. But what was the problem here? Problem is that when you give European style of training, European style of discipline, etc., some Indian customs are ignored. Okay, for example, the Muslims have to do their prayers 5 times a day. The Hindus will not eat the meat of cow, etc., etc. These kinds of customs were there. All these were ignored or blindsided when they started training them in the European method, and this started some reaction in the army against the British. You know how this culminated in Meerut, the Mangal Pandey incident, the Royal Enfield rifle starting the 1857 revolt. All these are part of this discontentment against the blind sight of Indian customs by British. Okay, so this is how the company's army is created. Now, to conclude this chapter, together we can say that the East India Company was transformed from a trading company to a territorial colonial power. Correct, right? So far I have said about the company changing from a mere small trading company all the way to somebody who controls the entire Indian subcontinent. Remember, I told you in 1600 they came as a small trading company. Eventually they started getting zamindari rights. Then they started annexing territories, conquered Bengal, Battle of Plassey, Battle of Buxar, getting the Farman from Mughals, defeating other local kingdoms, eliminating their European rivals, and finally they became a huge empire in India. Okay, and arrival of some new technology like the steam technology enhanced the British power in India. Okay, usually before steam engine was introduced, it used to take somewhere around 6 months for a person to come from Britain to India via sea. Okay, the ships used to take 6 months, around 6 months. But when steam technology was invented, it only took 3 weeks to reach from Europe to India. So now British can bring in more soldiers, they can transport more goods in a very less amount of time. So all these actually went in favor of the British. And now we will see how they set up a huge power, how they dominated India, and how they, did all what they did to India. Okay, so we are going to start the national movement very soon, but some more things have to be seen at first. Okay, I hope this much is very clear to you. Okay, One second. So, chapter 3, all right, the ruling the countryside. So far I have mentioned how East India Company finally became a dominant power, how they conquered all the territories, how they annexed different kingdoms, etc., etc. Now let's see how the company is starting their administration in India, in a bit more depth. Okay, so the company becomes the Diwan. On August 12, 1765, Mughal Emperor appointed East India Company as the Diwan of Bengal. Diwan of Bengal means what? Diwan means what? It's something like the collector. He has the power to collect the revenue from that territory. Okay, so company acquiring the Diwani of Bengal will get them all the taxes, all the riches of Bengal. This was a huge boost for the company. And do you know who was the Governor General at this time? It was Robert Clive. And for this purpose, Robert Clive actually painted a portrait of him. Not a portrait, painted a picture of him receiving the Diwani of Bengal. You can see it here. Okay, getting the Diwani of Bengal was a very huge milestone as far as East India Company is concerned. And Robert Clive, to commemorate this event, asked some painters to actually draw this sketch of him obtaining the Diwani. Okay. So after getting this Diwani, the company became the chief financial administrator of the territory that they controlled. Okay. Now they have to administer the land, organize the land revenue, etc., etc. Also, they have to pacify some other rulers who are ruling the countryside. All right. I mean, now they are administrators. They cannot just be traders. If they are administering a particular region, then they have to keep an eye out for the adjoining region as well. They cannot actually mess up with them. They have to create alliances. They have to create cordial relationship. Okay, so British was now starting to evolve as a political power rather than a trading company. Okay, so those who had held this local power had to be controlled, but they could not be entirely eliminated. So this is how company is slowly starting to understand Indian politics. Okay, so revenue for the country. The increase in the revenue as much as it could was the prime target of the company. I told you, East India Company was not looking for administration. They came to India for trade and profit. Profit was the only motive. Okay, let me make it very clear. Profit was the only motive. They had to get into the administrative field because of what happened later. Okay, I mean, installing puppet Nawabs were not anymore working. So they want somebody there who will do their bidding. And the easiest thing to do is take control of themselves. That is the reason East India Company annexed Indian kingdoms and took control over their administration, because they wanted to increase profit. That's it. Okay, so their only idea was increasing the revenue and buying fine cotton and silk cloth as cheaply as possible. Okay, and after getting this Diwani of Bengal, within the next 5 years, the value of goods brought by the company in Bengal doubled. Okay, which means their profits doubled. Alright, and revenue collected in Bengal could finance the purchase of goods export. So now they started using the money collected from the Indians to pay for the goods that is brought from the Indians. So this now become a one-way trade. I explained this earlier. They are using Indian money to pay the Indian goods. Earlier, they used to get money from Britain to pay goods in India. Now, after getting the Diwani, it is not anymore required, because they are collecting the Diwani in the territory of Bengal. So they can get money to buy the goods from India itself. Okay, so the drain is starting here again. Alright, so Bengal economy was now facing deep crisis. Why? Because this is a one-way trade. Everything is going out. Nothing is coming in. No infusion of capital. No infusion of financial assets. Everything is being drained out. Okay, so when an economy falls down, what will happen? The first thing that will happen is the bottommost sections of the society will take a hit. Peasants, artisans, craft people, these people lost their livelihood. Artisans were deserting their villages because they cannot find any jobs, they cannot feed their families. Okay, so they went to different villages. Peasants were unable to pay their dues. Okay, and to cap it all, in 1770, a terrible famine happened in Bengal, killing almost 10 million people. Already the economic situation was pathetic, and over and above that, a famine too came. Okay, 1/3 of the Bengal population was dead. Clear? One of the worst famines in the Indian history ever. Alright, so British now understood the need for improving agriculture. Because if people are just abandoning everywhere, that will not gain them revenue. They need more land under cultivation. Otherwise, if subsistence cannot be assured, then how can they grow commercially? Okay, that was the thought process. So most companies' officials began to feel that investment in the land had to be encouraged and agriculture has to be improved. Okay, you have to feed the peasants, you have to feed the artisans, craftsmen. Only then they can do their job. Only then you can get taxes. Only then you can earn profit. Okay, so a very famous personality called Cornwallis, Charles Cornwallis. You can see his figure here. Okay, Cornwallis came to India and set up the permanent settlement system. 1773, permanent settlement system by Cornwallis. Very important. Okay, as per this system, Rajas and Talukdars were recognized as Zamindars. Okay, Rajas and Talukdars were recognized as Zamindars. What does this mean? This means they can collect taxes from people and a portion of the collection should be given to the East India Company. Okay, rather than some other person or middleman collecting that revenue directly, these Rajas and Talukdars can collect these taxes, keep a portion of it on their own and give the remaining to British. Okay, so the amount to be paid was fixed permanently. For example, say 10 rupees. Okay, this is not the amount. This is just an example to make you understand what permanent settlement system is. Okay, not real value. So suppose 10 rupees is the tax that a person has to pay. Okay, this is forever fixed. This won't change ever. Okay, so the peasant has to give a permanent settled amount to the British. That is it. That was the logic behind permanent settlement. Okay, the idea was this would encourage the zamindars to invest more on land. So British is getting a permanent revenue. Doesn't matter what the zamindar is collecting. As long as British get a permanent revenue, zamindars can do whatever they want. So British thought that, say, if you have 100 acres of land owned by 100 peasants, 1 peasant, 1 acre. Okay, this is another example. Okay, 1 acre. Also, 10 rupees is the revenue from 1 acre of land. So, if 100 acre of land and 100 peasants are paying, it means you can get 100 into 10 as the revenue. Correct? 100 into 10 will be the logical revenue. But if the land under cultivation is increased, say instead of 100, now it is becoming 110 acres. What will happen? The revenue will become 110 into 10. It is 1100, 100 rupees extra. But zamindars do not have to pay this to British. Revenue is fixed. So whatever extra you can generate, you can keep. Okay, so this was the idea. British thought that this will encourage zamindars to expand the agricultural land. If more and more land is made into brought into agriculture, what will happen? Zamindars can earn more and more money, and at the same time, British can solve the problem of subsistence, of food. That was the idea. And whatever happens, the revenue earned by British is not decreasing. It is fixed and they will definitely get this. But the problem here was that the fixed revenue was a bit higher for people to pay. Okay, the revenue that has been fixed was so high that the zamindars found it difficult to pay. Okay, I told you, British fixed the permanent settlement system forever without change. So they looked into the future and kept a very high amount as the tax. So at the moment, the peasants are and the zamindars are unable to pay such a huge amount based on permanent settlement. Also, what happened? Anyone who failed to pay this revenue lost their zamindari. Okay, if a zamindar fails to pay that permanent settlement to the company, that zamindari land has been taken away from him and auctioned to some other person. Okay, so the system was actually very brutal. Okay, by the first decade of 19th century, the prices in the market rose and cultivation slowly expanded. Despite all these things, cultivation actually expanded. Okay, and increase in the income of zamindars started to occur. I told you, as the area of the land under cultivation increases, more and more can be collected as tax. But since it is permanently fixed with the British, the extra can be taken by the zamindar himself. He do not have to give to the company. He have to give to the company only that is fixed. Okay, so zamindars became more and more rich and the company is not getting this gain. Okay, this kind of issue happened. And as long as the zamindars could have given out the land to tenants and get rent, they were not interested in improving the land. So British's idea was, fine, even if we don't gain the money, at least the area under the cultivation would increase and at least it will solve the food problem. Okay, the subsistence problem would be solved. This was the tactics. But what did the zamindars do? Instead of expanding the agriculture, zamindars, they actually contracted this land to some tenants and started to get rent. Okay, now they are sitting at home doing nothing and contracted different parts of the land to different tenants. So the tenants will give them the money, they will take some of it, give back rest to the British. So no improvement, no enhancement, nothing. So British plan actually failed as far as permanent settlement system is concerned. Okay, also in the perspective of the peasant, this was extremely oppressive. Okay, because he had to pay a very high rent to the zamindar and that is not his land anyway. Okay, so there is no security for him. He has to pay a lot of money to cultivate in someone else's land and for that he has to pay tax also. So it is a completely oppressive system. Okay, so so the peasants were in such a bad state that they had to borrow money from money lenders. Okay, they cannot make enough to pay this rent, so they approached money lenders, taking lots and lots of cash at high rates and paying to the zamindars. Okay, now the peasants get into huge debt traps and eventually they will be evicted. Some of them committed suicide. Okay, etc, etc. Even now we are seeing all these things now. Peasants committing suicide because they cannot pay back the money they borrowed from the bank and all. Okay, something like that existed at that time also. Clear? This is the drawback of the permanent settlement system. Okay. So, permanent settlement system is going on like this, very oppressive, nobody likes it. Okay, the British does not like it, but zamindars does not like it, peasants does not like it. Now, this is the time when somebody else come into play. In the northwestern provinces of the Bengal presidency, somebody named Holt Mackenzie devised a new strategy for collecting these taxes. Okay, it came into effect in 1822. And this is known as the Mahalwari system. Okay, write it down. Mahalwari system or Mahalwari settlement, whatever. The idea was simple. Okay, this person understood that you have to collect the rent based on land. You cannot fix it permanently forever. Okay, fixing it permanently forever is not an option. Fixing some arbitrary price is not an option. Okay, assuming that the zamindars will do so and so is a bad idea. So he thought that you have to clearly survey the land and then based on those surveys fix a particular price which should be altered in the future as and when the situation changes. A very flexible plan devised by Holt Mackenzie. And the estimated revenue of each plot of the village was added up to calculate the revenue that the village had to pay. Okay, so instead of taking revenue from each and every zamindar and all, he made the village headman the authorized person to pay up the revenue. So for a particular village, a total revenue will be fixed. Okay, there might be many lands within a village. But altogether from that village, a particular amount of tax had to be paid. And the village headman is responsible for paying that tax. That is known as Mahalwari system. Okay, rather than going by the crop field, each and individual crop field and all, or rather than going by individual zamindars, together one village had to pay a collective tax to the British. This is known as Mahalwari. Okay, this demand was revised periodically. Unlike the permanent settlement system, which was forever, this was revised periodically and not permanently fixed. Okay, the charge of collecting this revenue was given to the village headman rather than the zamindar. So zamindari system or this permanent settlement system is also known as zamindari system. Both are the same. Okay, permanent settlement system and zamindari system are the same. So now in Mahalwari system, the zamindar was eliminated and the village headman became the authority for paying up the taxes. Okay, and this system is known as the Mahalwari system. This came in fore, especially in the northwestern regions of Bengal. We will study more about this in detail, the amount collected, etc., when we learn a higher standard textbook. Okay, but for now, just understand the concept. Don't confuse between zamindari system, Mahalwari system, and Rayatwari system. We are going to look at the third system, the Rayatwari system. These three are the most important revenue systems of British in India. So don't confuse it. Understand the difference. Clear? Let's look at the third one, known as the Munro system. Munro system is also known as Rayatwari system or the Rayatwar, whatever. Okay, so what is this Rayat? R-Y-O-T, Rayat. Rayat means peasant. Okay, so Rayatwari system means it is directly based on the peasant. No intermediaries, no zamindar, no village hetman, no nothing. Directly dealing with the peasant. Okay, so this Munro system or the Rayatwari system was the brainchild of Alexander Reed and Thomas Munro. Okay, this system was actually tried first by a person called Captain Alexander Reed. Okay, he conducted this, he performed this as an experiment in the territory he gained from Tipu Sultan. Tipu Sultan was defeated in the fourth Anglo-Mysore War, and this system was implemented there on a pilot basis. Okay, later Thomas Munro, who came to India in 1819 and ruled until 1826. Okay, he came to India and he developed this system in a better fashion and put it in entire South Indian region, especially Madras presidency. Okay, Thomas Munro, Madras presidency, Rayatwari system. Don't forget. So Reed and Munro felt that in the south there were no traditional zamindars. We can implement zamindari if there is a zamindar. Okay, but in South India, that system of zamindari was not there. So there is no traditional zamindars. So they thought that instead of having to keep someone else there, we can completely eliminate the intermediaries and directly deal with the peasants. That is the Munro system. Okay, directly deal with the cultivators and peasants who till the land and land for generations. But this was supposed to be a good idea for the peasants because there is no middleman, there is transparency and all. But the problem was this too was oppressive on the peasants. The tax fixed was very high. If the peasant failed to pay that tax, his land was confiscated. Okay, so this still was oppressive. All these three systems are oppressive in varying degrees. That's all. Okay, I hope these three systems are very clear to you. If you have any doubts, you can ask. Okay, this is very important. Permanent settlement, Rayatwari system and Mahalwari system. Three important revenue settlement systems in the modern India. Okay, now let's look at some specifics of the crops that are grown here. Okay, so the most important crop at that time that earned reputation were opium and indigo. Okay, and among indigo and opium, indigo was the most focused crop. I will tell you why. Okay, but other than these two, some other crops were important in certain regions. For example, in Bengal, jute was in prominence. Bengal, we have the Sundarbans Delta, we have this alluvial soil, perfect ideal place for jute cultivation. Okay, so jute in Bengal, tea in Assam, We have this Assam, Apple Valley tea and all. Na? So similarly, Assam was very popular for tea. United Provinces means Uttar Pradesh. Okay, Uttar Pradesh was prominent for sugarcane. Punjab was prominent for wheat. Cotton in Maharashtra. I mean, in order to cultivate cotton, you need black soil, and black soil is available in the Deccan region, Deccan Tract. Okay, so Maharashtra, cotton. Then rice in Madras. Okay, rice was prominently cultivated in Madras. So these are the important regions and the important crops. Very, very important. You have to be thorough with this, because such questions can also come. Associate the particular crop with a particular region. Okay, so now look at these two figures. Okay, now I am going to talk about why indigo is so important. I told you opium and indigo were the top crops at that time, and among that indigo is the more prominent one. Why? I am going to tell you that. Because color matters. Okay, like the modern day fashion designers say, it is very important that if you ask for a particular color, you have to get that particular color. Okay, if you ask for peacock blue, give peacock blue, not Prussian blue or cobalt blue or something. Okay, color matters. So look at these two figures. First one is a kalamkari print. Kalamkari print. Okay, you know this kalamkari art form. Na? Kalamkari art form is a very famous art form in Andhra Pradesh region, South India. Okay, so this is a kalamkari artwork. Very beautiful, intricate designs, etc. etc. Look at the blue here. Okay, look at the blue. Okay, the second one, this figure. This is actually a work by a person called William Morris. Okay, he was a poet as well as an artist in the 19th century Britain. Okay, now look at the blues here. These are different, not the same. Okay, both these blues are extremely rich in color. It is not a dull blue or a pale blue or anything. Both these are very vibrant, very attractive blues. Okay, why? Because these were dipped in a dye that is made of indigo. Okay, the blue color in both these prints are obtained from a crop called indigo. Okay, and indigo is very rich color, not pale or blushy color. Okay, so Britain was these prints actually were manufactured from indigo plants cultivated in India. Okay, and India was the largest supplier of indigo in the world at that time. Clear? For the textile industry to flourish, you need these colors. And the best and the biggest manufacturer of indigo in the world at that time was India. So obviously, Britain needed India to cultivate more and more indigo. Okay, so the indigo plant grows primarily in tropics. It is not easy to grow this plant in temperate regions. England is in a temperate climatic zone. India is a tropical country. So this is predominantly grown in tropical regions. Only small amounts can be grown in Europe. Okay, also the price was very high for indigo crops. Okay, so the cloth manufacturers had to depend on another plant called woad. W-O-A-D, woad. Indigo was very costly, so not many can afford that. So the manufacturers went for another plant which is called woad, W-O-A-D, to make these blue dyes. But the problem was that woad is abundantly available in temperate zone, but the output blue is actually pale. Okay, it is a very dim pale blue color, not the rich color that indigo gives you. Okay, so the people who dyes these clothes, the manufacturers or the textile agency at that time preferred indigo compared to woad. Okay, more and more pressure was laid on Europeans to bring in more and more indigo rather than woad. Okay, so European cloth producers persuaded their governments to relax the ban on indigo import. Since the indigo prices were very high, manufacturers actually put a ban on indigo and collected woad. Okay, so the cloth producers understood that the woad does not give the exact color, it gives you a pale and dull color. So instead of woad, we need indigo only. So they pressurized the government to relax this ban and bring in more and more indigo. French began cultivating indigo in Saint Domingue, Caribbean islands, Portuguese in Brazil, English in Jamaica, Spanish in Venezuela, etc. etc. So indigo was a very important dye at that time. So every colonizer started to produce this everywhere in the world. Okay, but even then India was the biggest producer and India was under the control of Britain. Okay, so they wanted Indians to produce as much indigo as possible. So when the demand of indigo increased, its existing supplies from these West Indian countries and America collapsed at some point. Okay, due to a variety of reasons, some wars, some climatic issues, etc., etc., the produce in various other parts of the world declined. And when the supply declines, what will happen? The prices will increase. Demand is also high. So what happened now? The Indians were under more and more pressure to cultivate more and more indigo. Okay, so rather than cultivating rice, wheat, etc., for subsistence, they were forced to produce more and more indigo for the British textile industry. This is the birth of commercial crops. Subsistence agriculture changes to commercial agriculture. Okay, best example is indigo. So the company in India looked for ways to expand the area under indigo cultivation. Okay, in 1788, only 30% of the British territory were under indigo cultivation. Okay, only 30% of indigo was imported by Britain from India. But by 1810, 95% of imports of indigo were from India. Okay, now you can understand the amount of indigo that has increased in the agricultural land. Okay, so as indigo trade grew, commercial agents and officials of the company began investing in indigo production. So when the demand is high, more and more people will invest in that because it is a guaranteed returns. It will gain you more and more profit, more investments. Okay, so those who had no money to produce indigo could get loans from the company and banks at that time. So that was the demand of indigo at that time. For simply cultivating indigo, you can avail loan from banks and East India Company at that time. Okay, so now I think you get a picture of how important indigo is. Okay, there are two kinds of indigo cultivation. Okay, one is known as the niche and the other is known as righty. Okay, niche and righty. Within the system of niche cultivation, the planter produced indigo in the lands that he directly controlled. Okay, just understand this. I am not explaining it in detail. Just understand the point and move on. He either bought the land or rented it from other zamindars and produced indigo by directly employing hired laborers. Okay, this is the niche cultivation where the planter directly controlled the indigo producing lands. Okay, he produced indigo in the lands that he directly controlled. He hired laborers from various parts of the country. They come to this land, do the work and produce indigo. This is the niche cultivation, the basic niche cultivation. The problem here is that the planters found it difficult to expand the area under niche cultivation. Okay, why? Because it can only be cultivated on fertile lands, and fertile lands are already densely populated. Okay, fertile lands already used for various other like rice, wheat, etc., and cannot be used for indigo. And indigo grows only in fertile lands. Okay, so this was a huge issue in indigo cultivation. So they attempted to lease in the land around the indigo factory and evict the peasants from that area. Okay, so this is one aggressive method they tried. Slowly start growing indigo around the factory and even gradually evict the peasants from around the factory and gain more and more land into the indigo crops. Okay, this was one idea, but this often led to various conflicts. Also, this was a labor intensive process. This required lots and lots of bullocks. This required lots and lots of plows, manual labor. So all this, this was expensive. Okay, niche cultivation on a large scale required many plows, bullocks, etc. So some investment was required. Less than 25% of the land producing indigo was under this system. The rest was under another system called righty system. Okay, so in the niche system, indigo was cultivated in the land directly owned by the planter. He brought in labor from different parts of the country and asked them to grow indigo there. Problem was indigo can be grown only in fertile lands which was already densely populated. Okay, so they have to evict the peasants who are already there in order to expand indigo cultivation there, and this often led to conflicts. Also, this was a labor intensive process and need lot of capital investment. Okay, I'm sorry, I think my feed is down. 1 second guys, please wait. Okay, I have lost internet connection in my feed, so I cannot see any of your comments. 1 second. The class will end in 10 minutes. Okay, just wait. Okay, so there were problems with this niche cultivation we have looked into. Now we are going to look at the other kind of cultivation of indigo. This is known as the riot system. Okay, very famous riot system. So what is the difference between niche and riot? So in the riot system, planters forced these riots to sign a contract, okay, an agreement known as the satta. Okay, planters asked these riots to sign an agreement known as satta. At times, they pressurized the village headman to sign the contract on behalf of the riots. Okay, if the riots do not sign that, then they will ask the village headman to sign on their behalf. Okay, and those who signed this contract were given some cash advances in low rates, which means they were given some loans earlier itself as an investment into the agriculture. Okay, problem is the loan committed the right to cultivate indigo at least on 25% of its land. Okay, so at least in the 25% of the agricultural land, as per this contract, the riot has to cultivate indigo. Okay, 1/4 of the land should be under indigo cultivation. Okay, price they got for indigo they produced was very low. Okay, the British got lots and lots of profit, but they did not actually convey that profit into the peasants. The peasants were given a very small amount of cash only. Okay, also planters usually insisted they grow indigo to be, they grow indigo in those soils which are fertile. I already told you this. Okay, and these fertile soils, when after indigo is grown, further crops cannot be grown there. Okay, indigo has a very particular root system that goes deep into the soil and sucks up all the nutrition and all. Okay, so you cannot actually grow another crop afterwards in the same land. That was a huge drawback. Once indigo is grown, that land is good for nothing for a very long time without the use of good fertilizers. Okay, so you cannot grow rice afterwards at that area. Okay, so they are actually losing a lot of land which could have been used for growing rice. So these are the issues that happened in the second method of cultivation by the riots. In the niche system, planters directly control the land. In the riot system, it is the riots who controls the land. That is the difference. Okay, riots are made to sign the contract. Clear? So this indigo became a blue rebellion. The importance of indigo or the significance of indigo increased so much that the term blue rebellion can actually be used for indigo cultivation. Okay, so in March 1859, thousands of riots in Bengal refused to go indigo. British are forcing them to plant indigo in 1/4 of their field, but the farmers are not getting any profit out of this. Okay, and they found this very oppressive. So they started to resist against the British. They said, no, we are not going to grow indigo anymore. In 1859, remember this year. 1859 is 2 years after 1857. Remember that, very important. Okay, so the indigo riots felt that they will actually have support from the British. Okay, they thought that they will get British support because 2 years ago in 1857 when a rebellion happened, British studied a lot of lessons. Okay, from 1857 onwards, the British policy is a bit lenient towards these people because they do not want another rebellion to break out after the revolt of 1857. So the Indigo peasants were expecting some leniency from British government. Okay, so in a place called Barasat, the magistrate Ashley Eden issued a notice that the farmers will not be compelled to produce indigo. Okay, according to their expectations or itself, the things happen. Okay, Ashley Eden said that the farmers will not be forced to grow indigo anymore. Okay, the government, but also they were not compelled to take in these contracts. Okay, the word went around that Queen Victoria has declared that indigo need not be sown. But this was not the case. Although he declared all these things, still the peasants were expected to grow indigo as per the contract, at least until the contract term ended. Okay, so the government brought in the military to protect the planters from assault. The riots were doing the rebellion, and the government wanted to protect the planters, who are the rich sections of the society. So they brought in the military. Along with the military, they also brought in a commission known as the Indigo Commission. Very important commission in the history, Indigo Commission. Okay, and according to this Indigo Commission, the planters were guilty for oppressing the riots. Planters were oppressing the riots based on various contracts, giving them very low money, low returns, etc., etc. And the Indigo Commission found that these planters are guilty and they were in favor of the riots or the peasants. Okay, so this revolt actually went on and later it subsided. After the revolt, indigo production in Bengal collapsed. Okay, so it was a success. The planters are not anymore forced to grow indigo. They can grow whatever they want. So eventually the rebellion subsided. So the planters are losing here. Okay, earlier the planters were dominating Bengal. So they decided to shift their focus from Bengal to Bihar. Okay, so they came to Bihar and started doing the same thing in Bihar, oppressing the rights to grow indigo. Okay, same thing again. And if you remember, this is the time when Mahatma Gandhi made his appearance in the Indian political scene. In 1917, a place called Champaran Satyagraha, that is a very famous Satyagraha that you all know. Why was that Satyagraha held? For the same reason, indigo cultivation in Bihar. Okay, so this is when Mahatma Gandhi made his official appearance in the Indian national movement. Also because of the indigo cultivation. Okay, so that is it. We are winding our session here. We have come to the end of it. Thank you everybody for joining. Please share my link and videos with your friends also. Okay, although it is not live anymore, you can still share this link with your friends so that they can watch the recording and all and can come to further classes. Okay, so remember, tomorrow onwards the UPSC civil service rate prices in Unacademy is going to increase. So if you would like to take a subscription, please do that ASAP and use my code MSRW1 to get 10% discount. Okay, also there is another class coming up at 8 PM in Unacademy app. The topic is Industrial Revolution. I will be taking, the class will start at 8 PM, so please join there. Okay, that's it. See you again tomorrow. Tomorrow there is a quiz. Our session will start with a quiz followed by the 4th chapter of NCERT. Okay, bye bye. Thank you.